Hello guys, welcome back. Today I wanted to talk about one of my favorite movies ever. It's a comfort movie for me, probably a weirder movie to be a comfort movie, but if you're kind of more of like interested in stranger movies, it's not that strange, it's just more of like a somber but just such a beautiful film, then I would highly recommend watching it. But today I'm going to be talking about All About Lily's Chou-chou, a Japanese film. Aren't going to be any spoilers about this film. Just going to be talking about some main themes and a little bit more detail. So if you are planning on going in blind, I wouldn't recommend watching this, but I would recommend watching if you kind of like to know the vibe of the film before you go in. And again, absolutely loved this movie. I think it's definitely worth watching at least once in your life. And before I even end the video, I want to say, like, I would absolutely watch this movie again, and I actually have. This movie is set in Japan, and it follows a group of young boys in Japan, mainly one. They're kind of like two main friends who, like, their friendship falls off, and then they, it just kind of follows them two mainly, but specifically in the lens of one main character who is a very sweet, reserved, quiet boy who kind of just gets caught up in the wrong crowd, and there's not really too much of a way out for him, and he finds his escape through music, through Lily Chou-chou's music, and he finds an online forum of Lily Chou-chou lovers who consider themselves transferred to the ether, is what they call it, when they listen to her music, where she kind of like lives. So throughout the film we don't necessarily see Lily Chou-chou or anything, but I don't think she comes out. Kind of just leads up to the big Lily Chou-chou concert. So this film really resonated with me as someone who uses music to really escape. Music is so important to me in my life, and especially the genre, I guess, of Lily Chou-chou was kind of more like indie, alternative, quiet. Mitski actually did a cover of Glide from Lily Chou-chou, which I love that song now. I listened to the Mitski version and the movie version, the actual Lily Chou-chou version, and I think it's just a beautiful song. And the movie itself is just so beautiful. There are themes of violence. There are themes of, I don't know what I'm allowed to say on YouTube. I'm very new to YouTube. There are themes of rug abuse. I think I can say rug. It's a more mature film, I would say, if you are kind of partial to violence. And there are also themes of self-exiting, SA, as well. So if you are more partial to that, if that's something that makes you really uncomfortable, I would recommend looking up when exactly that takes place in the movie and skipping it at that point. It's just more of a plot point than anything else, a little detail. It's not the entire plot of the film. Visually, this movie is stunning, like stunning, remarkable, and a lot of the visions that take place in the film, a lot of the scenes in the film, are, even to this day, I think about them in my head. Like, I'll go to like a field and I'll be like, oh, this field is giving Lily Chou-chou, like the grass specifically. So absolutely visually striking. The use of color throughout the film is just amazing. The use of imagery, the use of symbolism, and I just think all around it was a very artistically satisfying film. And also the character development is absolutely amazing, and it's just such a realistic film. I think that's what I really loved about it. Nothing felt like, this is just a movie. Like, everything was just so well. The actors did an amazing job. The writing was amazing throughout the film. Everything, the pacing was so amazing. it was just such a great film, but it was just so devastating. I would consider it one of the most heartbreaking films I've ever seen, and there's like barely any romance in it. The thought of betrayal, and with something so significant, it was just such a devastating watch, and I just felt so somber after I watched it. I just sat and I was like, oh my goodness, like I can't believe it. So there is a pretty significant plot twist. I feel like some people probably could have guessed it before, but I couldn't. So yeah, and just exploring how devastating it is to, like I said, have someone who have something that's your safe space, something like music, something that you go to escape, just stab you in the back is just so like, like I could barely watch. The violence is not overdone in my opinion. I think it was very tasteful. As you know, that's one of my favorite things, when it's not just like overwhelmingly gory for no reason, but it is still put in there and not shied away from. I do really love that. I love to see it still. But like I said, not overwhelming. Like I said, the characters were all important. The characters were all beautiful, could all be analyzed, and they're all significant. Nobody was insignificant. I will say my only qualm, it's not even a qualm, with the film is that there is a little middle part that could probably have been a little bit shorter. It's a very long film. I believe it's a little over 2 hours. And they were basically, if you've seen it, where they go on a trip, and it was important, but I do think it could have been shorter. A lot of it was just them having fun on the trip. But something significant does happen that I think is really important to the story. Some people might think that it was unnecessary, but I do think it was important to put in, just because it was a very traumatic moment. That wasn't necessarily a turning point for the film, just because there was already some insinuation that the boys would kind of turn to crime and everything, but I think this was still a pretty important instance in the film. And again, it really just spoke to the experience of being lonely in your youth, and having these interests that, your friends don't have the same interests. Maybe you even get bullied for them. Maybe they seem lame, especially for those of us who listen to more loser music. It spoke to that really well. It really did a good job of exploring people who kind of are more willing to embrace that side of themselves and face the consequences, face the haters, and people who are more wanting to shy away from it in order to seem tough, seem cool, and maintain this position of power that is such a common thing in the youth. Is just like, who's more popular, who's cooler, who has more power over the other kids. Again, it's so realistic. Exploring friendship at that time in your life, when so easily, your friends just turn against you when you're that age, and suddenly they hate you, suddenly they want bad for you, suddenly they are turning your other friends against you, and this group of friends that you had this entire time is just, they're gone like that, because one was just cooler than the rest, or one has more power over the rest. And just again, diving into how realistic it is in their specific community, where again they did turn to drugs, they turned to stealing. Costume design was another thing that I thought was just absolutely perfect. I loved the way that they dressed in the film. Outfits were so well placed with each personality. Physical appearance was very often used in a way to portray any kind of anguish. At one point, a girl loses her hair, and that kind of is a huge turning point for her. I thought that was just a great way to represent her losing her femininity and losing something very important to her after something happens to her. Guilt and guilt over things that you didn't necessarily have any control in, and how that can really just dull your life. And I feel like following the main character, one can almost assume that he didn't really have that he might have been cold to everything that was happening to him, or impartial to everything that was happening, and just, oh, woe is me, like that's how it is, that's life. But I genuinely believe that it was just showing that he was so far numb to everything that was happening, and truly the only time where he felt he could express himself was online in this forum. Not even speaking ever. He barely spoke throughout the film. I would love to, I might even look up how many times did he even speak in the film. He barely spoke. Just as someone who also kind of went through, you know, some tough things as a child, and I did start to get a little bit quiet when I was younger. I didn't really speak unless I was spoken to. It really just touched me in that way, and I felt like it is probably a little bit difficult to portray feeling in a film without allowing the main character to even barely speak. So I really did love that they were able to show his emotion through his almost his lack of response, showed you how he felt, and what this had done to him in comparison to the messages that he was sending online, and how, you know, smart, how intelligent he really was, and how invested in Lily's chou-chou he was, and how passionate he was about it. And it was always devastating when people who he did connect with throughout the film, you know, they got a little bit of personality out of him, especially one character who he did allow to listen to Lily's chou-chou on his little cassette player. That was also a turning point for that character, and we then followed her through what she did next, and how, and just seeing how the various characters responded to these traumatic events happening to them, because none of them were doing well. Like, none of them were in a better place than the rest. And it was always interesting to see the lens of the parents, and just half of them are just completely unaware of what is going on. The mom of one of the bullies was just this beautiful, kind-hearted woman, and it was just so, it was just such a strange, like, juxtaposition between her and her own son, and what he was doing behind her back as soon as he left the home. I love the way the film showed the different realities, I suppose. They're the same reality, but what was happening in the main character's real life versus what he was posting and reading online in the Lily chou-chou forum. I liked the way that it was these messages would just pop up on the screen and serve as almost a transition to the next scene sometimes. As for the ending of the film, I did mention before that I loved it. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was a beautiful ending. And I didn't see it coming, and it was just like, it's one of those movies that so much happens in the last 5 minutes, and you're like on the edge of your seat for the last like 5 minutes of the film. And again, devastating. Like, even watching the entirety of the film, you're like, nothing good has happened to these poor children, and they all just hate each other, and they're doing all these wrong things to each other. But you know, you can't help but feel bad for them because they're children, and like a lot of them are following one of them, and then the one, you're like, you know, something must be going on with him internally that he's acting this way, acting out. So the way that it concluded was just, it was a little bit satisfying. I hate to say that because of, you know, what happened. What happened wasn't, you know, a great thing, but it was, you know, it was kind of like a sigh of relief, you know, toward the end for the main character Just allowing him to get, you know, a little bit of, I don't want to use the word justice, but allowing it felt like the first real decision that he had made for himself. And it felt like him finally standing up for himself, because what happened to him, what he found out, was genuinely so, I keep using this term, but so devastating. Like, please watch it and you'll see, because Lily's chou-chou genuinely was the only important thing to him in his life. It was all he could escape to, and he just loved her music, and everyone dogged him for it throughout the film, for being just this loser who all he does is listen to this music, and he's going home and going on this forum. And I just feel like it's very relatable. It's very relatable in our modern day, especially if you grew up during the time I grew up. You know, the internet was not necessarily new, but you know, those internet forums, and like, I was on Tumblr. I shouldn't have been on Tumblr, but I was on Tumblr, and I think that I was, you know, sometimes using those types of platforms to just as an escape, even YouTube, just as a way to escape, because it's hard when your interests are very niche. Like, even my love of films, even my love of novels, like the literature I like to read is sometimes maybe jarring for other people or just uninteresting for other people, and that's totally fine. And same with the movies that I love to watch. Like, this movie is not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and it's not even going to be the general public's cup of tea. I haven't met many people who have ever seen this movie, and I haven't met many who would sit and watch it with me the whole time and who would actually like it. But just to have, so I can't even imagine, like, if I couldn't be able to have these discussions about these things that I really love, these forms of media that I really love, is just, the internet is just a way for him and a way for me to, and just a lot of people, especially growing up, to connect with people who like these kind of weirder things. And I think that was just, it really resonated with me in that regard, especially with things like my music taste and everything. It's only when I like go to a concert that I see people who genuinely enjoy the music that I like to listen to, because, you know, it's not always going to be stuff on the radio, and that's okay. And I think, you know, it is normal for you to feel like, because these are your interests, because they're not everyone else's thing, you know, might set me apart in a way that my interests, I won't be able to just find someone else out there. I can't imagine having one specific thing that was just my favorite artist, and a place where I could really escape and find people who also loved that artist, one person and one platform, and just, it blows up in your face. It was action-packed at the end. So definitely recommend watching. I'm trying to think of who I would recommend it to. I keep thinking back. I keep saying I would really recommend it to, like, anyone I know who loves a little bit of Radiohead. I feel like this is good for Radiohead lovers. So I don't know why. I just, after I finished it, I was like, I feel like these two go together pretty well. All about Lily chou-chou, Radiohead. So definitely, especially if that last thing that I said kind of resonates with you, definitely watch this. You feel like you can sit and appreciate something that explores Japanese youth culture in a more realistic way. Obviously, this isn't probably the experience of most Japanese youth. It was incredibly, like, tumultuous throughout the entirety of it. But it was just like, if you want to kind of see it through the lens of, you know, a Japanese high schooler who kind of goes through a lot, and how that explores his relationship with his friends, his parents. I'll stop there because I could go on and on and on. Please allow me to go on and on and on, and let me know in the comments if you do end up watching this movie, what you thought of it. I would love to hear other viewpoints, other big themes that you kind of think that I missed. But yeah, I really do love this film. I hold it very near to my heart ever since I've seen it, and I recommend it to so many people if I think that it might be something that they like. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.